Hi, I'm Shawna.
And I'm Liz.
Welcome to Getting Bookish, a weekly podcast where we will talk about different book-related topics, let you know what we're reading, and even answer Q&As from you.
Be sure to visit our website, gettingbookish.com, and check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Getting Bookish. If you enjoy our podcast, we'd love for you to subscribe and leave us a rating and review, which helps us to be seen by other book lovers.
With all that said, we hope you'll enjoy Getting Bookish with us.
Enjoy the podcast.
Hello, everybody, and we are back on our final Tuesday of the month, which means it is our Bookish Brief, which is one of our favorite episodes because we get to talk about what we've finished reading, what we've read, and what we are currently reading. And I love that because we get to tell you all of the juicy details of our bookish life, which, by the way, has been a little slow for me this month. And
me as well.
Yes, and I don't know what it is. I mean, it's just life. But last week we kind of hit it out of the park with our reading. But that happens, you know. You go through highs and lows.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Sometimes I think, you just you get in this great groove where you're just devouring book after book. And some months there's just lots of life that happens.
Yes, exactly. And that's exactly what happened. And I have a smaller stack. But like I was telling you earlier, Liz, I feel like last month I read some books that were kind of like, I could have, if I hadn't read them, my life wouldn't have changed, But I feel like the ones that I did read this month were really fun, really exciting. And so I feel like this month was quality instead of quantity.
Yay.
So that makes me excited. So let me go ahead and start with what I finished. So the book that I was reading last time was The Day the World Came to Town. And it's this long title. It's about 9/11 when all the planes landed in Gander, Newfoundland. And I think it was 6,000 or 7,000 people entered this town that only had 10,000 people in it. And so it's it's just about a community coming together and loving on one another regardless of their language. Some of them didn't even speak the same language or whatever their customs were. So it was really great to see that. It kind of gave a really loving message to something that was so tragic. So I really, really enjoyed that one. The other one that I was reading was Life with My Idiot Family. Remember, we had kind of talked about that title.
Yes.
This is a true story about a woman who went through some severe abuse when she was younger. And so it's her story. I listened to this one. The narration on it is pretty poor, but I try to be forgiving because she is the one reading the story. But if something like the quality of narration really gets to you, then you might want to read the book. But I didn't finish it. And the reason I didn't finish it was because it started getting into the legalese of everything and passing laws. And not that that's not important, but I feel like with any book, as soon as it gets to any type of lawyer or law, I just start looking away. I don't know, my brain cannot focus. So I stay clear of any types of those books. So I got that far and then I was like, I just can't go on. But I do know that she was able to change some laws for the better to protect the victims. So I'm happy for that. Yeah. So as far as the books that I have read, the first one I read is called Made, and this is by Stephanie Land. This is a memoir. So she's telling the story about, she has this small baby, of course, it's small. And she gets out of this terrible relationship, but she's trying to hold it together for her and her daughter. And it's just a story about basically a mother doing everything that they can to provide for herself and her child. And it's if you like strong women, strong women characters and that, kind of story of redemption, then you're really going to like this book, and kind of gives a little bit of behind the scenes to maids. I mean, I've had people clean my house, and just from reading this book, not that I'm ever mean to them, but I'm usually more shy and introvert and like probably embarrassed that they're cleaning my house. But I feel like after reading this, I kind of want to get to know their story a little bit more. The next one I read is called Romanov. This cover.
So pretty.
I love this cover. This is by Nadine Brandes. And so the story of the Romanov family is true. But this book is a YA book, and it kind of puts a magical spin on things. So we know that the entire family was murdered by the Bolsheviks. But there's also been this almost fairy tale-esque thought that maybe Anastasia had, got away. And that's been this kind of, not theory, but thought over the past, decades. And so this book kind of takes that and it takes it a little bit further with a little bit of magic and kind of what maybe we could hope really happened in this book. So then I read Inheritance by Dani Shapiro. Do you know anything about that book?
I know it has a beautiful cover.
Okay, yeah, it has that dress.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this story, I don't want to give a lot away, but her husband this is also a memoir, and it's read by the author if you want to listen to it on Audible. Her husband did a DNA test, one of those Ancestor.com or whatever. And then he said, you should do one too. And she's like, okay, whatever. So she does. And the results that she gets were very unexpected, we'll just say. And it changes her entire life. And I don't know how I felt about how she reacted to that. It's really hard. Again, this is her story, so she can react however she wants. So I liked it, but there were just some parts that I don't know. I couldn't really attach myself to the story. I didn't feel as deeply with her as I did with Stephanie Land in Maid. Then I read The Only Woman in the Room. And that,
I want to read that.
Yes. That is by Marie Benedict.
Yes.
It's funny because I went into Barnes & Noble and I saw that they do a book club there. And I was like, I didn't know Barnes & Noble did a book club. And I was just talking to the girl about it. And she said, yeah, last month we did The Only Woman in the Room. And I said, what is that about? And she said, it's about, World War II. And I was like, what? Why don't I know about this book? So she showed it to me. I bought it. I started it that day and I finished it like 2 days later. This is great. I won't give too much away, but it's Hedy Lamarr, the actress from a long time ago, like in the 30s, 40s, black and white film star. And everybody knows her name. Well, most people know her name. Beautiful young lady. But nobody quite knows her real story. She was born in Austria and she married one of, if not the most influential men in Austria, who sold firearms and weaponry to other countries, which this would later lead to some not so great things going on in World War II, and she knew she needed to escape. So it's this insane story, and I kept having to double check that it was true, that this is really her, biography. I mean, that's intense. Not only that, but what she does at the end is incredibly fascinating. So if you like those backstories of like complete surprise and shock, and then to see again another strong woman character, and I'm telling you, the book was fascinating. The end blew my mind.
Awesome.
So you have to read it. Okay. I think that is it for what I've read. So Liz, heading over to you. What have you read for May?
I also have a very short list this month, which is kind of funny. And Shawna and I were talking about this. Last month, my list was so long. I had read so many books. And this month, I was like, this can't be it, right? But it is. So my excuse, not that I need one.
It's a good excuse, though.
It is. I'm moving.
Yay!
Which is really exciting, but it just made like the last 2 weeks, I just had so little time to sit and read. But I did read some things this month. I read 6 books, and 5 of those books I actually listened to, because that's what I had time for. So we're going to start with, I listened to this book, but I own a copy, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. And I've listened to the first Harry Potter book multiple times. As we've discussed before, Jim Dale is a master at reading the Harry Potter books. And I've listened to the first one multiple times, but I'd never listened to any other books in the series. And so it was really fun to listen to this one. It was fun to remember like the beginning of Ginny's story, because this is the first book that she becomes more of a character in, and she's a pretty cool character. I know we all love Hermione. I love Hermione, but sometimes we forget about how brave and amazing Ginny is, and so I got to like just kind of see that beginning of that story again and remember that, which was super fun. So if you are watching, this is the illustrated version, and these are so gorgeous.
I was just gonna say, for our YouTube watchers, can you open up a page?
Oh, definitely.
Because that looks like how much I love Robert Ingpen for The Wizard of Oz and Pinocchio.
Yes. Oh, here we go with a gorgeous Quidditch scene.
That is amazing. Where did you get those books?
I think you can get them anywhere.
They just
probably
appeared?
got mine on Amazon. Yes. They aren't like you can only get them through certain stores. You know, sometimes they have special editions like that.
Do you have the whole set of that?
So 3 of them have come out so far, and they usually come out, I think, in October each year. And so the 4th one, I'm sure I've already pre-ordered it.
I love it.
But they're gorgeous. And I think especially if you are reading them aloud to kids, it's so nice to have those beautiful pictures. All right, so that was my first one, and I listened to it. My second one, Shawna, you are going to laugh. First of all, I can't even find the dust jacket for it.
Oh, no.
Because that's kind of the state of uproar my house is in at the moment. But I normally, when I read a book, it starts very pristine, and I finish the book very pristine. This book has seen some things. So this is my copy of The Library Book by Susan Orlean. And if you're watching, you can see that there's like grease stains, and there's something up here. It looks like chocolate milk spilled on the top of it, which it probably was chocolate milk, because sometimes I like to have chocolate milk when I go to work. I don't know how it got this used. It's embarrassing, but here it is.
Don't lie. Those are tears all over it for the books that died.
Right. I know. This book was actually, so this is The Library Book by Susan Orlean, and this was a very emotional read for me, especially in the beginning when they're describing what happened at the main branch of the Los Angeles library. And just like the devastation, but not only the devastation of the books, but how devastated the library workers were. Mm-hmm. Like they had to bring in counselors. Because these people, librarians typically, and I was a librarian, and you're very passionate about what you do. And so when you see these things, and they had priceless works of art, and they had a lot of archives, and a lot of these things were just destroyed. Mm. And it was just like that beginning description of what happened was very like, there were a couple times I was tearing up reading it, and I'm like, no one died. I'm tearing up about... The books died. And, but it was a really fascinating book, and it goes into more than just that single event of the fire. It talks about, like all these amazing women who were the library directors through the history of the library and how they ended up in their building. And so it's really a wonderfully detailed history of the library itself and this catastrophic event that happened. And so it was fantastic. I don't read a lot of memoirs or nonfiction that are like this.
Yeah.
And so this was kind of outside of my normal realm, but so good. I highly recommend it. The next book I read is War Storm. It's the last book in the Red Queen series. I think it's book 5. And it was okay. You know, when you are finishing a series just because you've read the whole thing.
Right.
That's kind of how I felt with War Storm. I was very much Team Maven. I'm still Team Maven. For people who have read the books, they know exactly what I'm talking about right now. I'm not going to go into it too much because I like to avoid spoilers as much as possible. It was okay. Like, I think that it would be satisfying for most people. I just, you know, I wanted everything to happen, and that's not how books are, which is fine. The next book I read, these are books I listened to, so I don't have physical copies of them. The next book I read is Evermore by Sarah Holland, and it is a part of the Everless series. And this fantasy world I love. This is such a well-developed fantasy story that feels like a fairy tale. And it's in this world where people make money and they pay for things, and their coins are actually made from their blood, which takes time from them.
Okay.
So you can pay for a loaf of bread with an hour coin. And that hour coin represents an hour of your life.
Oh.
And so it's a little dark, but it's so fascinating. Like, it's unlike anything I've read before. And so the first book is called Everless, and that came out about a year ago. And then Evermore is book 2. I don't know if there are going to be more books. Mm-hmm. There wasn't like a definitive answer on Goodreads, but so fascinating. Just the story and how everything is getting woven together. I just love a story that is that like really detailed, rich, like backstory and everything. It's just, I'm very much enjoying them. So if you guys like a fantasy book, Everless is fantastic, and I really enjoyed Evermore as well. The next one I finished is Obsidio by Jay Kristoff. So that's you guys have heard me talk about these already. The last book in the Illuminae files. So I read the first 2. And this, again, just a really fun science fiction story. So I listened to it. It's full cast, which I'm obsessed with audiobooks that are full cast. And it was just as good as the first 2. So I don't want to say anything about it, because if you haven't read the first 2, anything I say is going to be a spoiler. And then the last book I enjoyed this month is The Muse of Nightmares. And this is the first book. It's a duology. The first book is Strange the Dreamer. And then the second book is this one, Muse of Nightmares. And I listened to this one, but I do happen to have a physical copy of it. So I thought I would show you. If you're watching, it has this gorgeous, like, metallic purple cover, which I very much like. This is another really amazing and unique story. Laszlo Strange is the main character in the books, and he's a librarian, which is just such a fun type of character to have. And it's just like this really amazingly well developed fantasy world, and it's an adventure, and it's just really, the characters are very, like, they feel like they're real people that are being described. So it was fantastic as well. And I agree with you this month, Shawna, that everything I read I really enjoyed. I mean, there were a couple of books that they were the end of the series, and you know how sometimes you're like, that wasn't my favorite character. I wanted someone else to come off on top, or whatever it is. And so there were some things like that, but I felt like everything I read this month was really enjoyable.
Good.
So what are you reading right now?
Oh, well, reading right now is Beasts of Extraordinary Circumstances.
Ooh.
This is by Ruth Emmy Lang. I did not know anything about this book. It has a really cool kind of mysterious cover.
Yeah.
The reason I got this book is because I heard on a podcast, I think it was, I don't remember which one, that said if you are a fan of Harry Potter and wish you could enter into another world because you're longing for that kind of magical world, that you would like this book. So
Ooh.
I thought that's pretty high standards, but I'm
Yeah.
going to give it a shot. And so I really know nothing about it. I didn't read the jacket because I didn't want to know any. And usually I read the jackets, but I'm trying to do this new thing where I don't, because then everything in the book is a surprise.
Yeah.
And I'm not very far into it, so I don't have too much to say, except that it has kept my interest from page 1.
I love that.
Yes. And it's really, really exciting, and I can't wait to read more of it. So far, I think I'm in chapter 6 or 7, and I would give it 5 stars from this point. I hope it stays that way.
Yeah. I hope it does too.
Yes.
There's nothing worse than starting a book that's so good and then it not being good.
I know.
But I'm
Yeah.
excited to hear next month how it was.
Yes, so I'll probably finish it pretty quickly because I'm loving it. And Liz, what are you currently reading right now?
Well, I am reading Stephen King's The Colorado Kid.
Oh.
So this is the book. Stephen King is not a go-to author for me. He is a master storyteller.
Yes.
We had to read On Writing when I was in college, and just like how he talks about his methods and everything. He's fascinating, and he's a master. But I don't like to read a scary story.
Yeah, me neither.
And so this book, The Colorado Kid, is actually more of like a mystery book. And it hasn't been in print for quite a long time. But the show Haven on the Sci-Fi Channel, which I watched a long time ago, is based on this book. And I didn't even know that when I watched the show.
Oh.
And so I was really excited to read this, but it's been out of print. And so they just put it back in print, and I got it this month, and I've been reading it, and it's super fun. It's always really strange to read a book after you have seen a screen production of it.
Yes.
It's not my favorite way to read a book, but the way he describes the characters, the way they were cast in the show, was really well done. I feel like I'm reading it and I'm like, oh my goodness, that so matches up with this picture that I already have in my head. So that has been super fun. But funny story this week, this man saw me reading and he's like, are you enjoying your romance book? And I looked at him and I was like, I guess if you saw the cover, there's like a girl in a swimsuit because they're on the beach.
Yeah.
There's also like a dead man's hand at the bottom of the picture.
Right.
But I guess if you just maybe you were just, I don't know, not paying attention. And he's like, are you enjoying your romance book? And I looked at him and I was like, actually, this is a book by Stephen King. And it was just never in my life has there been a more perfect moment to have been reading a Stephen King book than when someone assumed I was reading a romance.
Right.
And he was like, oh.
Yeah. He probably didn't see any of the cover, and he just assumed you are a young girl, and it must be a romance book.
It must be a romance. And so it was just so perfect because in that moment I was like, I am so glad that I wasn't reading a romance book right now. Not that there's anything wrong with
right, but it felt
book,
even better to be like, it's
so
Stephen King.
It's Stephen King. So that is what I'm reading, and I just started listening to Finale. It's the last book in the Carnival series, and I'm not very far into it, but I've really enjoyed the Carnival series so far. I love anything. I will read pretty much any book that has to do with the circus, especially if there are magical elements. Also, that is one of my favorite My favorite genres. So those are the books that I am reading right now. Now, last month, we did a really fun thing, and I think we should do it again this month.
Yes.
We chose our pick of the month and our skip of the month.
Yes.
And I'm not 100% sure what mine are yet.
Oh.
Do you know what yours are?
I think so. Do you want me to go first?
Yes, please.
Okay, so my skip of the month is going to be Inheritance by Dani Shapiro. Again,
Okay.
it's just, I couldn't connect with the story. Again, it's really always hard for me to be critical when it's a memoir, because I don't like to be critical of people's lives, and I don't think it's necessarily her life. It was just maybe the way the story was presented. Maybe that's what it was. So that would kind of be my skip. But I know that it's been a kind of a hot topic book that everybody's been talking about lately. So I don't know. I'm not going with the flow on that one. My pick of the month, I don't have it with me because as soon as I read it, I was like, Mom, you have to read this book. And I gave it to her. It's The Only Woman in the Room, about Hedy Lamarr. It was just fantastic. I loved it. I finished it so fast. And so that would definitely be my pick of the month. I absolutely loved it. So Liz, tell me your pick of the month and skip of the month, whatever order you want to do.
All right, so I'll do skip of the month first. My skip of the month is going to be War Storm. So that's a part of the Red Queen series. It's one of those, the whole series for me was just never a 5-star series. And so, you know, when something goes on for 5 books and you weren't in love with it to begin with, it's a little bit more work to finish. So for me, that one is my skip of the month. I think in that series, as long as you don't care about the world building aspects, like you don't need like how the magic works to be explained to you, you're probably really going to enjoy it. But if you like to be like, well, why does that person have magic and that person not have magic? Those answers cannot be found here. So if you're really accepting, you'll really enjoy the series. And if you're less accepting, you're probably not going to enjoy it as much. And so it just wasn't my most favorite book ever. So that's my skip.
Okay.
My pick, I'm not going to choose Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, even though in my mind that feels so obvious as being my pick. Yeah. Like, I read a Harry Potter book. That's obviously the best book I read this month. So I'm not going to choose. I know, it isn't. It's not fair for the other books in the category.
Right.
So my pick of the month is going to be Muse of Nightmares.
Oh.
I love the way that whole story was woven together. I love how each of the characters was just very unique from each other, which is something that not all YA books really masters. Like a lot of secondary characters, they're just kind of like these gray, you know, they're very one-dimensional. And I felt like all the characters were really well developed and the story was just so enjoyable. So that's the second book. The first book is Strange of the Dreamer, but Muse of Nightmares is definitely my pick of the month.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, it sounds like we both read some good quality books, and I feel like our skip ones were really the only one that were in that running for that category.
I think so too. My skip was an easy choice.
Right.
My pick was a harder choice.
Good. That's how it should be.
Yeah.
Yes. Let's go into June having another hard time with the pick of the month.
Definitely. I'm really looking forward to some of the books on my June to be read pile. So.
Me too. All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed listening to our Bookish Brief for May. And again, we will see you next week for another topic.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed hanging out with us. Don't forget to check us out on social media and subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on any of the fun. See you next week.